still remember staring at those empty chairs on what was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. 24 empty seats that I had reserved for my family, my parents, my 3 siblings, aunts, uncles, cousins, people who had raised me, who I thought would always be there for the important moments. My name is Sarah Martinez, and I'm a Navy intelligence officer stationed in Norfolk, Virginia. At 32, I'd built a life that I was proud of, a successful career serving my country, a beautiful apartment overlooking the Chesapeake Bay, and most importantly, I'd found the love of my life in David, a civilian contractor who worked with military communications. The wedding was small, but elegant, held at a historic venue in Williamsburg. David's family filled their side completely. His parents, siblings, grandparents, even distant cousins had flown in from across the country. They welcomed me with open arms, treating me like I'd always been part of their family. But my side? Those 24 chairs sat mockingly empty, decorated with white ribbons that seemed to highlight their vacancy. 3 weeks before the wedding, I'd sent the final head count to the caterer. I'd called my mother in Phoenix, where my family had relocated after I joined the Navy. "Mom, I need to confirm numbers. Are you all still coming?" There was a long pause. "Sarah, honey, your father's back is acting up again, and flights are so expensive right now. Plus, Michael has that important job interview, and Lisa's kids have school events." The excuses poured out like water through a broken dam. Each one felt like a small betrayal, but the final blow came from my youngest brother, Jake. "Look, sis, I know you're living your military dream and all, but some of us have real problems here. Not everyone can just take time off for a party." A party. He called my wedding a party. I'd hung up that night and cried until my eyes were swollen. David held me, promising that his family would be enough, that love was what mattered, not numbers. He was right, of course, but it didn't stop the hurt from cutting deep. The wedding day itself was beautiful despite everything. David's aunt walked me down the aisle since my father wasn't there. His younger sister gave a speech about gaining a sister she'd always wanted. His mother cried happy tears and whispered to me during our first dance that she was proud to call me daughter. But those empty chairs haunted every photo, every moment. When people asked about my family, I'd simply say they couldn't make it, swallowing my pride and the growing resentment in my chest. After the honeymoon in the Bahamas, David and I settled into married life. I threw myself into my work, analyzing intelligence reports and coordinating with various agencies. My job required discretion, focus, and emotional detachment, skills that served me well in dealing with my family situation. I'd call home occasionally, keeping conversations brief and surface level. They never asked about the wedding, never asked to see photos. It was as if that chapter of my life had never existed in their world. I stopped expecting them to care, stopped hoping they'd realize what they'd missed. That was 2 years ago. 2 years of building a life with David, of creating traditions with his family, of slowly accepting that some relationships just aren't what you hope they'll be. I thought I'd made peace with it all. I was wrong. What would you do if your own family abandoned you on the most important day of your life? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and let's see how this story unfolds. It was a Tuesday morning in March, when my phone rang at exactly 06:30 hours. I was already dressed and ready for my shift, sitting at our kitchen table with my coffee and the morning intelligence briefings spread out before me. David was still in the shower, and the house was quiet, except for the rhythmic sound of water running upstairs. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize, but the Phoenix area code made my stomach tighten. Nobody from home ever called this early unless something was wrong. "Sarah Martinez," I answered, using my professional tone. "Ms. Martinez? This is Robert Henley from Henley, Crawford and Associates. I'm an attorney representing your great-aunt Millicent's estate." Great-aunt Millicent. I hadn't thought about her in years. She was my grandmother's sister, a woman who had never married, never had children, and had always seemed like more of a family legend than a real person. I remembered meeting her maybe 3 times in my entire life, always at family gatherings where she'd sit quietly in the corner, observing everyone with sharp, intelligent eyes. "I'm sorry to hear about her passing," I said, though honestly, I wasn't sure if I'd even known she was still alive. "Thank you, Ms. Martinez. I need to inform you that you've been named as the primary beneficiary in Ms. Millicent's will." I nearly dropped my coffee cup. "I'm sorry, what? Your great-aunt left you her entire estate. This includes her home in Scottsdale, Arizona, her investment portfolio, and various other assets. The total value is approximately $3.2 million. The words hit me like a physical blow. I set down my cup with shaking hands and pressed my back against the chair for support. There must be some mistake. I barely knew her. Surely my parents or my siblings. No mistake, Ms. Martinez. She was very specific in her instructions. She left letters explaining her reasoning, which I can share with you when we meet. She also left smaller amounts for other family members. Your parents received $50,000 each, and your siblings received $25,000 each. I felt numb. This woman I barely knew had left me more money than I'd ever imagined having, while the family who had raised me received what amounted to consolation prizes. Why? The question escaped before I could stop it. Mr. Henley's voice softened. She mentioned in her letter that you were the only one who ever sent her cards on her birthday and holidays. The only one who wrote to her during your deployment overseas. She said you reminded her of herself. Independent. Strong. Making your own way in the world. I remembered now. During my deployment to the Mediterranean, I'd sent cards to various family members, including Great Aunt Millicent. It had seemed like the right thing to do, a way to maintain connections while I was so far from home. I'd never expected anything in return, never even knew if she'd received them. When can we meet to discuss the details? I heard myself asking. I can be flexible with your schedule, given your military service. Would this weekend work? After hanging up, I sat in stunned silence. David found me there 20 minutes later, still staring at the phone in my hands. Honey, you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. I looked up at my husband's concerned face and felt tears starting to form. I think I just inherited a fortune from a ghost. As I explained the call to David, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was going to change everything. Not just our financial situation, but the delicate balance I'd created in dealing with my family's absence from my life. I was right to be worried. By that afternoon, my phone hadn't stopped ringing. The first call came at 1400 hours while I was in a classified briefing. My phone, set to silent, lit up with my mother's contact photo, a picture from 5 years ago, back when I still believed family meant something. I couldn't answer during the briefing, but the missed calls kept coming. By the time I got back to my desk an hour later, I had 17 missed calls and 12 text messages from various family members. My mother. Sarah, call me immediately. We need to talk about Aunt Millicent. My father. Heard about the inheritance. Family meeting needed ASAP. Michael, my older brother. Sis, we should discuss what's fair for everyone. Lisa, my sister. Can't believe she left everything to you. Call me. And Jake, my youngest brother. This is fucked up. She barely knew you. I stared at my phone screen, feeling a familiar mix of anger and disappointment wash over me. These people hadn't called me once since my wedding. Not on my birthday, not during the holidays, not when David had been in a car accident 6 months ago and spent 3 days in the hospital. But now they couldn't stop calling. I decided to call my mother back first, stepping outside the secure facility to make the call on my personal phone. Sarah, finally. Honey, we need to talk about this whole inheritance situation. Hello to you too, Mom. How have you been? It's been what, 8 months since we last spoke? There was a pause. Don't be dramatic, Sarah. This is important. We think there might have been a mistake with the will. A mistake? Well, yes. I mean, you barely knew Aunt Millicent. We took care of her for years, visited her, included her in family gatherings. It doesn't make sense that she'd leave everything to you and just give us these small amounts. I felt my jaw clench. Small amounts? You mean the $50,000 each that you and Dad received? It's not about the money, Sarah. It's about fairness. Family takes care of family. The irony was so thick I could have cut it with my K-bar knife. Family takes care of family. I repeated slowly. That's interesting, Mom. Where was family when I needed them 2 years ago? Oh, here we go again with the wedding. Sarah, we explained why we couldn't make it. No, you made excuses. There's a difference. The conversation deteriorated from there, ending with my mother hanging up after saying she'd spoken with my siblings, and they all agreed I should do the right thing and share the inheritance equally. The next call was from Michael, who took a different approach, playing the guilt card about his kids' college funds and his mortgage. Lisa tried tears, talking about her divorce and how she was struggling as a single mother. Jake went straight to anger. accusing me of somehow manipulating a 93-year-old woman I'd met 3 times in my life. By evening, I was emotionally exhausted. David ordered takeout from our favorite Thai place and listened while I recounted each conversation. "What are you thinking?" he asked, handing me a container of pad thai. I stirred the noodles absently, my appetite gone. "I'm thinking that it's amazing how quickly people can find your phone number when they want something from you. Are you going to share it? The inheritance?" I looked at my husband, this man who had held me while I cried about those empty wedding chairs, who had never once made me feel like I wasn't enough. "David, these people didn't show up to the most important day of my life. They haven't called in months. They don't know that you were in an accident. They don't know about your promotion at work. They don't know that we've been trying to have a baby. They know nothing about our lives because they've chosen not to be part of them." He nodded, reaching across to squeeze my hand. "But now they want me to hand over money that someone left to me specifically, because I was the only one who bothered to maintain a relationship with her, however small. So what are you going to do?" I thought about Great Aunt Millicent, sitting quietly in corners at family gatherings, watching everything with those sharp eyes. I thought about the birthday cards I'd sent, never expecting anything in return. I thought about those empty chairs at my wedding. I'm going to Arizona this weekend to meet with the lawyer, and I'm going to honor Great Aunt Millicent's wishes, exactly as she intended them. My phone buzzed with another text from Jake. "Don't be selfish, Sarah. Think about family for once." I turned off my phone without reading the rest. Can you imagine the pressure Sarah is feeling right now? When family becomes the enemy, who can you really trust? Let me know what you think she should do in the comments, because this decision is about to change everything. The flight to Phoenix felt longer than my deployments overseas. David wanted to come with me, but I needed to do this alone. As the plane descended into Sky Harbor Airport, I could see the sprawling desert city below, all brown earth and scattered developments stretching to the mountains on the horizon. Mr. Henley had arranged to meet me at his law office on Saturday morning, then drive me to Great Aunt Millicent's house in Scottsdale. The law office was in one of those glass buildings that reflected the desert sun, making me squint even with my sunglasses on. Robert Henley was older than he'd sounded on the phone, maybe in his 70s, with silver hair and the kind of gentle manner that probably made grieving families feel at ease. His office was filled with family photos and had a view of the mountains that reminded me why people moved to Arizona. "Ms. Martinez, thank you for coming. I know this must be overwhelming." We sat across from his mahogany desk while he opened a thick file folder. "Before we discuss the specifics of the estate, your great aunt left this letter for you. She insisted that you read it first, before making any decisions about the inheritance." He handed me an envelope with my name written in careful, old-fashioned handwriting. My hands were surprisingly steady as I opened it. "Dear Sarah," the letter began, "if you're reading this, then I'm gone, and you're probably very confused about why a relative you barely knew left you her worldly possessions. Let me explain." I could almost hear her voice as I read, remembering the few conversations we'd had during those family gatherings. "I've watched our family for 93 years, and I've learned that there are 2 kinds of people in this world, those who show up, and those who show up only when they need something. You, my dear girl, are someone who shows up." My throat tightened as I continued reading. "When you were deployed overseas, you were the only family member who took the time to send me cards. Not just once, but regularly. You wrote about your experiences, asked about my health, remembered my birthday. You treated me like a person who mattered, not just an obligation to check off during holidays." The letter went on to describe how she'd watched my family over the years, how she'd noticed who made effort and who didn't, who remembered important events and who found excuses. "I heard about your wedding through your mother. I also heard all the reasons why none of them could attend. Work conflicts, travel expenses, scheduling issues. But Sarah, I've lived long enough to know that when something is truly important to you, you find a way to make it work." I had to stop reading and take a breath. Mr. Henley quietly pushed a box of tissues across the desk. "I attended your cousin Jennifer's wedding last year. You remember Jennifer, Michael's daughter? Your parents flew out for that one. Your siblings all made it. The whole family was there, celebrating love and new beginnings. It made me wonder what the difference was between her wedding and yours. The difference, of course, was that Jennifer had never challenged the family dynamic by joining the military. She'd never moved across the country to serve her country. She'd stayed close, stayed safe, stayed in the pattern they all understood. I want you to know that I'm proud of the woman you've become, proud of your service, proud of your independence, proud that you've built a life based on your values rather than others' expectations. This inheritance isn't charity, Sarah. It's recognition. Use it to continue being the person who shows up, who cares, who makes the effort. The letter concluded with specific instructions about the house, the investments, and her personal belongings. And Sarah, when your family inevitably calls demanding their fair share, remember this. Fairness isn't about equal distribution. It's about recognizing and rewarding the effort people actually make. They've shown you who they are. Believe them. I folded the letter carefully, my eyes blurry with tears I hadn't expected. She was quite a woman, Mr. Henley said softly, very clear about what she wanted and why. How long had she been planning this? She revised her will 3 years ago, about 6 months after your wedding. She mentioned that event specifically as a turning point in how she viewed family dynamics. 3 years. She'd been watching, evaluating, making decisions about who deserved what based on their actions, not their genetics. Are you ready to see the house? I nodded, tucking the letter carefully into my purse. Whatever happened next, I now understood that this wasn't just about money. This was about being seen, being valued, being recognized for the choices I'd made, and the person I'd become. Great Aunt Millicent had given me more than an inheritance. She'd given me validation. Great Aunt Millicent's house took my breath away. Nestled in the foothills of Scottsdale, it was a modest ranch-style home with stunning views of the desert and mountains beyond. The interior was immaculate. Hardwood floors, Southwestern-style furniture, and walls lined with books and carefully curated artwork. This wasn't the home of someone who had been forgotten or neglected. This was the home of someone who had lived deliberately, purposefully. Mr. Henley walked me through each room, explaining the various assets. The investment portfolio was diverse and well-managed. The house itself was worth over $800,000. There was even a small collection of Native American pottery that had been appraised at significant value. She was very financially savvy, he explained as we stood in her study, looking out at the desert landscape. Conservative investments, but smart ones. She lived modestly, but comfortably. I ran my fingers along the spines of her books, military biographies, historical novels, books about the Southwest. On her desk was a small framed photo I recognized from one of those family gatherings. All of us together at my grandmother's 80th birthday party. I was in my dress blues, having just returned from deployment. Mr. Henley, legally, what are my obligations here? Can my family contest the will? He adjusted his glasses thoughtfully. They could try, but it would be difficult. Your great aunt was of sound mind. The will was properly witnessed, and her reasoning is clearly documented. The gifts to your parents and siblings show she didn't forget them. She made conscious choices about amounts. That afternoon, I called David from the house. "How are you holding up?" he asked. "It's surreal. David, this place is beautiful, and it's clear she put a lot of thought into this decision. But my family," I trailed off, looking out at the desert sunset painting the sky orange and pink. "They're still calling? 17 missed calls since this morning. And now they're talking about getting a lawyer." There was silence on the other end of the line. Then David said, "Sarah, what does your gut tell you to do?" I thought about the question seriously. In the military, we're trained to trust our instincts, to make decisions based on available intelligence, and then stand by them. My gut tells me that Great Aunt Millicent knew exactly what she was doing, and that I should honor her wishes. Then that's what you do. I'm proud of you, honey. That evening, I finally answered one of my mother's calls. "Sarah, thank God. We've been worried sick. What did the lawyer say? Can this whole mess be straightened out?" "There's no mess to straighten out, Mom. Great Aunt Millicent left a very clear will. I'm going to honor her wishes." "What does that mean exactly?" "It means I'm keeping the inheritance she left to me, just as she intended." The silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. Then, "Sarah, this is about more than money. This is about family loyalty." I felt something inside me snap. Family loyalty? Mom, where was family loyalty when I needed you at my wedding? Where was it during my deployment when I was writing to Great Aunt Millicent because I was homesick and needed connection? Where was it when David was in the hospital and none of you even knew because you never call? That's different. No, it's not different. You want to talk about loyalty? I've been loyal to you my entire life. I called on holidays, sent gifts, tried to maintain relationships even when it wasn't reciprocated. I served my country and made you proud. But none of you bothered to show up when it mattered. My mother's voice turned cold. Fine, if that's how you want to be, Sarah. But don't come crying to us when you realize that money can't replace family. You're right about one thing, Mom. Money can't replace family. But you know what? Great Aunt Millicent showed me more love and respect in her final gesture than my actual family has shown me in years. I hung up before she could respond. Within an hour, I had texts from all 3 siblings. Michael accused me of being brainwashed by military culture. Lisa said I was heartless for not thinking about her children. Jake's message was too profanity-laden to repeat. But for the first time in years, I felt at peace with a family decision. I spent Sunday morning walking through Great Aunt Millicent's neighborhood, imagining her daily routine, thinking about the woman who had seen me clearly when my own family couldn't. When I flew back to Virginia that afternoon, I carried with me not just legal documents, but a sense of validation I hadn't realized I'd been missing. David picked me up at Norfolk International, and during the drive home, I made a decision. I want to keep the house, I told him. Maybe not move there immediately, but keep it as a retreat, a place we can visit. And I want to set up a scholarship fund with part of the money for military families, kids who are following their own paths despite family pressure. David smiled, reaching over to squeeze my hand. That sounds like something Great Aunt Millicent would have loved. It did. And for the first time, I felt like I truly understood what family was supposed to be about. Not just shared genetics, but shared values, mutual respect, and showing up when it matters. Sometimes the most important lessons come from the people we least expect. Sarah's decision to honor her great aunt's wishes shows us that family isn't always about blood. It's about who shows up when it matters. What do you think about her choice? Leave your thoughts below. The fallout from my decision came swift and harsh. By Tuesday morning, I had been blocked on social media by my parents and 2 of my siblings. Jake left a voicemail calling me a selfish bitch who forgot where she came from. Michael sent a long email detailing all the financial struggles the family was facing and how I could single-handedly solve them all, but was choosing not to. The hardest part was Lisa's approach. She had her 8-year-old daughter Emma call me. "Aunt Sarah?" Emma's small voice came through the phone, breaking my heart immediately. "Mommy says you won't help pay for my school because you don't love us anymore." I had to step outside my office building to take that call. Using a child as emotional manipulation was a new low, even for my family. "Emma, sweetheart, that's not true at all. I love you very much. But Mommy says, sometimes adults have disagreements about grown-up things, but that doesn't mean we stop loving each other. You understand?" After I hung up, I sat in my car and cried. Not for the money, not even for the family drama, but for the little girl being taught that love was conditional on financial transactions. Work became my refuge. My commanding officer, Captain Rodriguez, noticed I was distracted and called me into her office on Wednesday afternoon. "Martinez, everything okay? Your work is still exemplary, but you seem different this week." I debated how much to share, but Captain Rodriguez had always been someone I respected and trusted. "Family issues, ma'am. I recently inherited a significant amount of money from a great aunt, and my family is unhappy with how she distributed her estate." Captain Rodriguez, a woman in her 50s who had fought her own battles in a male-dominated field, nodded slowly. "Let me guess. They didn't show much interest in your life before, but now they have opinions about what you should do with your inheritance?" "Something like that, yes, ma'am." "Martinez, in my experience, money doesn't change people. It reveals who they already were. The question is, are you going to let their true colors change who you are?" That conversation stayed with me as I drove home to David that evening. He had takeout waiting, Mexican food from our favorite place, and had already opened a bottle of wine. "Rough day?" he asked, pulling me into a hug as soon as I walked through the door. Lisa had Emma call me. She coached her to say I don't love them because I won't share the inheritance. David's jaw tightened. That's unconscionable. I keep questioning myself, David. What if I am being selfish? What if family really should come first, regardless of how they've treated me? We sat at our kitchen table, the same place where I'd received that life-changing phone call just a week ago. "Sarah, let me ask you something. If your great aunt had left the money to one of your siblings instead of you, and they decided to keep it, what would you do?" I considered the question honestly. I'd probably be disappointed, maybe hurt, but I'd respect their decision. It was her money to distribute as she saw fit, and would you cut them out of your life? Use your children as weapons? Demand they ignore the deceased's wishes? No, absolutely not. Then you have your answer about who's being unreasonable here. That weekend, I decided to drive down to Virginia Beach and visit David's parents. Tom and Margaret Chen had welcomed me into their family from the beginning, treating me with warmth and respect I'd rarely experienced from my own relatives. We sat on their back porch overlooking their garden, drinking coffee and watching the sunrise. "You've seemed troubled lately, dear," Margaret said, her gentle voice full of genuine concern. I found myself telling them the whole story, the inheritance, my family's reaction, the guilt and confusion I was feeling. They listened without judgment, asking thoughtful questions and offering perspective. "Sarah," Tom said finally, "Margaret and I have been married for 42 years. We've seen families torn apart by money, and we've seen families strengthened by adversity. The difference is usually whether people choose love or greed when tested. Your great-aunt gave you a gift," Margaret added. "Not just money, but clarity about who the people in your life really are. That's valuable information." Driving home that afternoon, I made a decision that felt both liberating and terrifying. I was going to stop engaging with my family's demands entirely. No more phone calls, no more justifications, no more guilt. I would honor Great-Aunt Millicent's wishes, use the inheritance wisely, and focus on the family I'd chosen, David and the people who had actually shown up for my life. It wasn't easy, but it was right. Monday morning brought one final surprise: a handwritten letter in my mailbox from my great-uncle Walter, Great-Aunt Millicent's younger brother who lived in Oregon. I'd forgotten he existed. "Dear Sarah," it began, "I heard about Millicent's passing and her will. I want you to know that she talked about you often in our phone calls. She was so proud of your military service and your strength in building an independent life. She saw in you the qualities she valued most: integrity, loyalty, and the courage to stand by your principles. Don't let anyone make you feel guilty for being exactly the person she hoped you would be." I folded the letter carefully and put it with Great-Aunt Millicent's letter in a special box. Sometimes validation comes from the most unexpected sources, just when you need it most. 6 months later, David and I were sitting on the porch of Great-Aunt Millicent's house, our house now, watching the sun set over the Sonoran Desert. We decided to use it as our winter retreat, spending holidays and leave time in Arizona while maintaining our primary residence in Virginia. The house had become a sanctuary for us. David worked remotely when we were there, and I found that the desert quiet helped me process the stress of my intelligence work. We'd made small changes, updating the kitchen, adding a home office for David, but mostly we kept it as Great-Aunt Millicent had left it. It felt like honoring her memory. The scholarship fund was officially established, the Millicent Martinez Foundation for Independent Military Families. The first recipient was a young woman from Tennessee whose parents had disowned her for joining the Air Force instead of getting married right after high school. Reading her essay about finding her own path, despite family pressure, brought tears to my eyes. My family's reaction to my silence had evolved over the months. The anger had given way to occasional guilt trip attempts, usually around holidays. My mother would send cards with messages like, "Thinking of you and hoping we can work through this difficult time." Michael tried LinkedIn, sending me professional networking requests as if we were business associates. Lisa's approach remained the most manipulative, sending photos of her children with captions about how much they missed their rich aunt. But Jake surprised me. 3 months after I'd stopped responding to their demands, he called with a different tone entirely. "Sarah, I need to apologize. I've been thinking a lot about what happened, and I realize I was way out of line." I almost hung up, expecting another manipulation attempt, but something in his voice stopped me. "I'm in therapy now," he continued, "working on some anger issues, some family stuff, and my therapist helped me understand that we treated you terribly long before the inheritance came up. The wedding thing, God, Sarah, I'm so sorry about the wedding." We talked for 2 hours that day. Jake told me about his struggles with addiction, his jealousy over my success, his resentment about feeling left behind when I joined the military. It didn't excuse his behavior, but it explained it in a way that felt human rather than simply cruel. "I don't expect you to forgive me right away," he said toward the end of our conversation. "And I'm not asking about the money. That ship has sailed, and honestly, Great-Aunt Millicent was probably right about how she distributed things. I just want you to know that I see now how badly we failed you, and I'm sorry. It was the first real apology I'd received from anyone in my family, David and I had also started trying more seriously to have a baby. The inheritance had given us financial security that made starting a family feel less stressful. We'd converted one of Great Aunt Millicent's spare bedrooms into a nursery during our visits. Pale yellow walls with southwestern art and a view of the mountains. "Do you think she would have liked being a great-great-aunt?" David asked one evening, as we painted the nursery walls. "I think she would have loved any child who was raised to show up for people," I replied. The previous month, we'd gotten news that I was pregnant, 8 weeks along, everything looking healthy. When I called Jake to share the news, he was the only family member I was still in contact with. He cried on the phone, "I want to be better, Sarah. I want to be the kind of uncle this kid can count on." "Then show up, Jake. That's all any of us can do. Just show up." As I sat on the porch that evening, hand resting on my still flat stomach, I thought about the family this child would know. David's parents, who had already started knitting baby blankets. His siblings, who were planning visits to meet their new niece or nephew. Jake, who was working hard to become someone worth knowing. And the memory of Great Aunt Millicent, who had taught me that family isn't just about blood. It's about who shows up when it matters. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. For a moment, I tensed, wondering if it was another family member trying a new approach. But the message made me smile. "Ms. Martinez, this is Jennifer Watson, the scholarship recipient. I graduate from the Air Force Academy next month. Thank you for believing in military families who forge their own paths. I hope to make you proud." I showed the text to David, who squeezed my hand. "Great Aunt Millicent would be proud of you," he said. "I think she'd be proud of all of us," I replied, looking out at the desert where the first stars were beginning to appear, the ones who decided to show up. The inheritance had given me more than money or property. It had given me clarity about what family really means, the courage to honor my own values, and the resources to help others find their own paths. Sometimes the best gifts come from the people you least expect, delivered exactly when you need them most. Sarah's journey shows us that sometimes we have to choose the family that chooses us back. Her story reminds us that showing up for people is what really matters, not just sharing DNA. If this story touched your heart, hit that like button and subscribe for more incredible true life stories. And remember, the people who truly matter will always show up when it counts. What's your take on Sarah's decision? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to share this story with someone who needs to hear it today. You know, sharing my story with you today has been healing in ways I never expected. If my journey helped you see that you're not alone in your struggles with difficult family situations, or if it gave you courage to stand up for yourself when it matters most, then everything I went through was worth it. Here's the thing. I know most of you listening right now won't hit that subscribe button. Statistics show that less than 3% of people who watch these stories actually subscribe. But if my story touched your heart, if it made you feel less alone, or if it reminded you that you deserve people who show up for you, then please just hit subscribe. It's completely free, takes literally 2 seconds, and it's the only way I can keep sharing these real stories that matter. Stories about real people facing real challenges just like you and me. Your subscription tells me that these stories are making a difference, that someone out there needs to hear that they're not alone. So please, if you felt something today, if Sarah's courage inspired you even a little bit, just hit that subscribe button. It's the one simple way you can help me keep telling stories that might change someone's life. Because sometimes, we all need to hear that we're worthy of love, respect, and people who actually show up. Thank you for listening to my story today. Thank you for showing up.